Procurement leaders often ask me, where should we look for inspiration? It's a fair question. Many have invested heavily in the organizations over the past years. They have built strong teams, cultivated internal and external relationships, and implemented state-of-the-art information systems. The basics are in place, the machine is humming. So where do you turn when you want to go further? The default answer is benchmarking. If you work at a car maker, you compare yourself with other car makers. If you work in pharma, you look at other pharma companies. And benchmarking is comforting. It reassures people that they're not falling behind. But here's the problem. How much can you really learn from competitors who face the same suppliers, the same regulations, and often even employ the same people? Take the car industry. Procurement talent moves easily between firms, and the supplier base is largely shared. A buyer who leaves Volkswagen one week might be negotiating the same suppliers at BMW or Mercedes the next. In that world, benchmarking is more like looking into the mirror than looking ahead. You may feel reassured, but you rarely see something truly new. This hasn't always been the case. When I started as a consultant more than 30 years ago, Japanese car makers offered real inspiration. They had decoupled component development from vehicle development. That meant innovation in components could progress independently without waiting for a new model cycle. It sounds simple, but it transformed speed and efficiency. For a while, Tesla was also a source of inspiration. They were a greenfield EV maker, and they behaved more like a tech company than a traditional car firm. They rewrote the rules of vertical integration, software updates, and even the way they thought about the bill of materials. Today, Chinese manufacturers are drawing attention for a different reason: the astonishing speed to market. What takes 3 or 4 years elsewhere is done in 18 months. That forces us to ask not just how are they doing it, but also what is it about our own processes and assumptions that slows us down. Each of these moments provided lessons, but each was time-bound and each eventually became absorbed into the mainstream. Which is why over time I've become critical of benchmarking within one's own industry. It feels safe, but it rarely sparks transformation. The deeper point is this: true inspiration usually comes from looking beyond your own sector. But that can be a hard sell inside large organizations. People will say, we don't make hundreds of millions of iPhones every year, so Apple isn't relevant. Or we can't operate like Amazon because we don't run a platform business. Not everyone is ready to draw analogies. And that's why I've always liked an approach I came across early in my career. It was called the ruthless competitor. The idea is to imagine a virtual rival who is completely unconstrained by legacy and tradition. They don't carry the weight of your factories, your ERP systems, or your ingrained ways of working. They can build the procurement function from scratch, using the newest technology, the leanest structures, and the boldest ideas. The ruthless competitor doesn't exist in reality, but by thinking through what they would do, you see your own blind spots more clearly. Where are you held back by habit rather than necessity? Where are you protecting processes that have long outlived their value? Where are you benchmarking yourself against peers who are just as constrained as you are? Interestingly, the same logic is now shaping the frontier of artificial intelligence. The latest models are no longer trained on real data scraped from the web. They're increasingly trained on synthetic data generated by other models. In a sense, they are benchmarking themselves not against the past, but against a simulated future. And that's what gives them the ability to leap ahead. The ruthless competitor works in the same way. They are your synthetic benchmark, an imagined rival who exposes what you would never see if you only compared yourself to peers who looked and act like you. They force you to ask harder questions. If someone started fresh today with none of your constraints, what would they do differently? And why aren't we doing it ourselves? Inspiration, in other words, doesn't just come from looking outward. It comes from looking inward and then imagining outward without limits. That requires courage because the answers can be uncomfortable. They may tell you to rethink structures you have spent decades building, or to let go of practices that feel safe but add little value. But for procurement leaders who want to shape the future rather than maintain the present, that's the work. So my question to you is this. If you had to compete against a ruthless rival, free of your history and constraints, what would you do differently? And what's stopping you from doing it first?